120 million and more abducted, shipped mostly towards the west, and many went to Brazil, to the Caribbean. Most went to Brazil, Caribbean, and then US. 120 million, mostly from West Africa. And again, there were so many that died in this shipping too. So during this period of time, what is less known is the reorientation of the societies and the complete depletion of these areas and strengthening of these areas, and yet the cultures were forever changed. And remember too that a lot of the cultures here and religions and just foods and languages, etc., became transferred here. And so these are strongly African influenced places. Brazil, the Caribbean, and the southern US are all strongly African influenced. Okay, so another thing that happened is the politics, of course, had to change. So when the Europeans were there and left, a power vacuum is created, and it becomes very difficult to govern. Also, boundaries redrawn. Again, the boundaries are redrawn. Some of these states, the tribal peoples, they traveled around, and their own culture boundaries were in place and in effect, and changed and shifted over time. It wasn't like there was a sign saying this is this tribe's region. Now they might have had their own signs, but it was something that was agreed upon. And yeah, there was conflict too, but when Europeans came in, there was an understanding of these natural tribal agreements and boundaries, and then the states being redrawn made it very difficult to politically to govern. And so a lot of dictators came in, and there's been a lot of civil war, a lot of issues from the map being redrawn according to the European colonization. And what happened after World War I when these boundaries were redrawn. And then many of these places, yes, they are independent states. However, they haven't been independent states for all that long. And so we'll get a little bit more into that and the actual period where African nations really started to become independent. So this is huge change from the colonial period. And okay, so there's also been change to the resources, because as Europeans came in, there was a lot of change as far as more erosion, different kinds of farming that caused erosion. And as more people started to be in these areas, it exceeded the carrying capacity often. And so, especially in this transition zone, the savanna here, and in what is known as the Sahel, which is the area just below the Saharan Desert, in this transition zone, and which is also where this is the zone where Islam and Muslim people are the influence in the north, are the major influence, and then tribal and Christian people of the south, and where this zone is shifting downward. Also, this zone is moving south as far as the erosion, and the Sahara Desert is moving. This may or may not be related to global warming, but it is certainly growing bigger, this desert. And it is shifting to the south also. And so more and more people, more and more use of the trees and bushes and shrubs that are remaining for cook fires, and more and more erosion results, lack of water, disease. So we could talk a little bit about diseases too, because Africa, as the human resources were depleted, as the lands were depleted, tragically, even climate was helping deplete Africa. Then disease became rampant too. And there's 3 different types of disease and different scopes of disease vectors. There is epidemic, and there is pandemic. Now, epidemic is when a local disease becomes regional, it becomes epidemic, it breaks out of just the locality that it existed in. And pandemic is when it becomes worldwide. So a worldwide disease that originated here, it was HIV, AIDS, and it became epidemic, and then pandemic as it traveled around the world. Now, diseases do travel around the world, such as bird flu from Asia and other diseases that have become pandemics. It's due to air travel. It's very easy for diseases to travel, and different kinds of flu have become pandemic. So this is just something that has occurred through rapid travel that we have today. There's waterborne diseases too. Many diseases that are passed through mosquitoes, and tsetse fly disease, and there's also schistosomiasis, which is passed through snails and into stagnant drinking waters. And this is really tragic, especially tragic here in Africa, where often waters become very stagnant and deoxygenated, and good environments for snails and for the development of schistosomiasis, which is a disease that then will enter humans through the drinking water. So many diseases that are here are deadly diseases that can travel. So that's enough for right now. And we'll talk a little bit more next time. We'll continue on with Africa as a whole before we get into the region.